Brave is probably the reason privacy browsers stopped being something only security researchers and Linux enthusiasts talked about. Before Brave, if someone wanted a more private browser, the usual recommendation was Firefox with 5 different extensions and a settings guide that looked like a university assignment. Brave took a different approach. Install it, open it, and most of the work is already done. That simplicity is its biggest selling point. Under the hood, Brave is built on Chromium, the same open-source browser project Chrome is based on. So if you've ever used Chrome, Brave immediately feels familiar. Websites look the same. Most Chrome extensions still work. Keyboard shortcuts don't suddenly change. The learning curve is basically zero. But Brave removes many of the Google-specific services and integrations that ship with Chrome while adding its own privacy features. Chrome is deeply tied to Google's advertising and data collection ecosystem. Brave is designed to minimize that relationship. The moment you visit a website, Brave starts blocking ads and trackers automatically. No extension required, no configuration required. It's simply on by default. Now you might be wondering, what's the difference? Aren't ads and trackers basically the same thing? Not really. An ad is simply something trying to sell you a product or service. A tracker is something trying to learn about you. Sometimes an advertisement contains tracking code. Sometimes it doesn't. Likewise, many trackers exist solely to collect data and aren't advertisements at all. Imagine walking through a shopping mall. The ads are the billboards hanging from the ceiling. The trackers are the people secretly writing down every store you walk into, how long you stay, and what you look at. Brave blocks many of the billboards, but it's especially interested in stopping the people carrying clipboards. That's where Brave Shields comes in. Shields is Brave's built-in privacy system. Every time you open a website, it blocks known advertising trackers, many third-party cookies, numerous fingerprinting techniques, and many other background requests that most people never even realize are happening. Exactly what gets blocked depends on the site, but the goal is to reduce unnecessary data collection without requiring users to configure anything themselves. And the funny part is, you'll sometimes notice it because websites get annoyed. You'll eventually land on a page that says something like, "It looks like you're using an ad blocker. Please disable it to continue." That's basically the website admitting it expected to load advertising or tracking resources before it even showed you the article. Brave also upgrades connections to HTTPS whenever a secure version of a website is available. Most major websites already use HTTPS by default today, but Brave helps ensure you're using the encrypted version whenever possible. Then there's fingerprinting. This is one of those terms that sounds incredibly technical, but the basic idea is surprisingly simple. Imagine every browser leaves tiny clues behind. Your screen resolution, your operating system, your installed fonts, your language, your time zone. Individually, none of these identify you, but combine enough of them together and your browser starts looking surprisingly unique, like a digital fingerprint. Brave works to make fingerprinting less reliable. It limits some of the information websites can access, standardizes or randomizes certain browser characteristics, and generally makes it harder for trackers to consistently identify your browser over time. It won't make you invisible, that's impossible, but it does make fingerprint-based tracking significantly more difficult. We'll come back to fingerprinting later because another browser on this list takes that idea even further. Brave isn't just a browser anymore either. Over the years, it's grown into its own ecosystem. There's Brave Search, an independent search engine designed to reduce reliance on Google search. There's Leo, Brave's built-in AI assistant. Leo can summarize pages, answer questions, and help explain content while using privacy protections designed to minimize the amount of personal information shared. By default, requests are routed through Brave's infrastructure rather than being sent directly from your browser to AI providers, although Leo still relies on remote AI models unless you choose to use a local model. There's Brave Sync, which lets you synchronize bookmarks, passwords, history, and other browser data between devices without creating a traditional online account. Instead, your devices are linked together using an encrypted sync chain that you control. And then there's Brave Rewards. This is probably the most controversial part of Brave. The basic idea is simple. Instead of relying only on traditional website advertising, Brave lets users choose whether they want to receive Brave private ads. These ads are matched to your interests locally on your device rather than by building a centralized advertising profile. If you opt in, you can earn BAT, Brave's cryptocurrency, which can be used to support participating creators and in some regions redeemed through supported partners. Some people love it. Some people pretend it doesn't exist. The good news is you can ignore it completely if crypto isn't your thing. Brave works perfectly well without ever enabling rewards. Of course, Brave isn't perfect. Because it's still Chromium-based, some privacy enthusiasts are uncomfortable relying on the same browser engine that powers Chrome, even though Chromium itself is open source and Brave removes many Google-specific components. Still, for most people, Brave is probably the easiest recommendation on this list. If you're using Chrome today and want substantially better privacy without learning a completely new browser, Brave is about as painless a switch as you can make, but Brave tries to offer a complete ecosystem. A browser, search engine, AI assistant, sync service, VPN, firewall on supported platforms, and an optional advertising and reward system. If Brave's philosophy is give people every privacy tool you'll ever need, DuckDuckGo's philosophy is almost the complete opposite. Don't overwhelm people. Just make privacy easy. Most people already know DuckDuckGo because of its search engine. Long before the browser existed, millions of people were using DuckDuckGo search simply because they wanted an alternative to search engines that build detailed advertising profiles. Building a browser was really the next logical step. Because here's the thing, switching search engines only solves part of the problem. You can search with DuckDuckGo all day long, but if your browser is still allowing dozens of trackers to follow you around the web, you've only changed half the equation. So DuckDuckGo built its browsers around a simple idea. Open them, browse the web, and don't think about privacy. It's probably the easiest privacy browser on this entire list. Most of the time, the browser simply stays out of your way and quietly does its job. Interestingly, DuckDuckGo doesn't use the same browser technology on every platform. On Windows, it's built on Microsoft's WebView 2, which uses Chromium and Blink under the hood. Android also uses Chromium. On macOS and iPhone, however, DuckDuckGo uses WebKit, the same browser engine that powers Safari. Most people will never notice the difference, but it's a good reminder that DuckDuckGo browser is really a family of browsers rather than one identical application everywhere. Regardless of the platform, the browsing experience is intentionally consistent. The browser blocks many known third-party trackers before they load, upgrades connections to HTTPS whenever a secure version is available, and includes privacy protections designed to reduce the amount of information companies can collect while you browse. Then there's probably DuckDuckGo's most recognizable feature, the Fire button. It's one of those ideas that's so simple you're surprised nobody thought of it earlier. Imagine handing your phone to a friend. Maybe you're showing them a photo. Maybe they just want to search for something. Then you suddenly remember the 15 tabs you opened at 2 in the morning while trying to figure out why your washing machine sounds like a helicopter. The Fire button is basically an emergency reset. One tap closes your tabs, clears your browsing data, and removes cookies and other website data, giving you a fresh start. It feels less like closing a browser and more like pulling the eject handle in a fighter jet. It's also one of the reasons DuckDuckGo has become popular with less technical users. That same philosophy shows up in another feature, cookie consent management. If you've browsed the web in Europe or almost anywhere these days, you've probably developed muscle memory for clicking Reject All over and over again. DuckDuckGo can automatically respond to many of those consent prompts by choosing the most privacy-friendly option available. It doesn't work on every site, but when it does, it's one less interruption between you and the page you actually wanted to read. DuckPlayer lets you watch many YouTube videos with significantly less tracking than watching them directly on YouTube. Email protection gives you a free Duck address that strips many hidden email trackers before messages are forwarded to your normal inbox. Duck.ai lets you chat with several AI models while routing requests through DuckDuckGo's service to reduce the amount of personal information shared directly with AI providers. Like most AI assistants, it still relies on remote models, but it's designed to collect less information than using those services directly. The next browser doesn't use Chromium at all. It starts with Firefox's Gecko engine and asks a very different question. What if Firefox already came with every privacy setting turned on? If Brave is Chrome reimagined with stronger privacy protections, LibreWolf is Firefox after someone spent an entire weekend asking, do we really need this? More often than not, the answer is no. LibreWolf isn't developed by Mozilla. It's a community-driven fork of Firefox, meaning it starts with Firefox's open-source code but ships with a very different set of priorities. The biggest difference isn't what LibreWolf adds, it's what it removes. One of the first things to go is Firefox's telemetry and other optional data collection features. Firefox includes diagnostic and technical reporting that helps Mozilla improve the browser, and most of it can already be disabled if you choose. LibreWolf takes a simpler approach by disabling or removing those features out of the box. The philosophy is straightforward. If data doesn't need to leave your computer, it shouldn't. That same philosophy extends throughout the browser. Many features that communicate with Mozilla or other online services are removed, disabled, or replaced with more privacy-friendly defaults. Privacy settings that exist in Firefox, but often require digging through menus or following a hardening guide, are already configured. Search defaults are changed, tracking protections are strengthened, and many of the compromises Firefox makes in the name of convenience simply disappear. The result is that much of the work people would normally spend time configuring manually has already been done before you even launch the browser. The result is a browser that feels immediately familiar but behaves very differently. A good way to think about it is this. Firefox tries to balance privacy, compatibility, convenience, and ease of use. LibreWolf deliberately shifts that balance toward privacy. When there's a trade-off between compatibility and limiting data collection, LibreWolf is generally more willing to accept the occasional inconvenience. Unlike Brave, LibreWolf doesn't try to build an ecosystem around itself. There isn't a proprietary search engine, an AI assistant, a rewards program, or a growing collection of online services. It's aimed at a much smaller audience. People who already like Firefox but wish it came with much stricter privacy defaults. Instead of spending 20 minutes following a hardening guide or several hours tweaking advanced settings, LibreWolf does most of that work before you even install it. Most privacy browsers focus on reducing the amount of information websites can collect about you. Mullvad browser takes a slightly different approach. It assumes that some information will always be exposed, so instead of only trying to hide it, it also tries to make that information far less useful. That might sound strange, but it's one of the most interesting ideas in browser privacy. Mullvad browser is developed by the team behind Mullvad VPN in collaboration with the Tor project. And before you ask, no, you don't need a Mullvad VPN subscription to use it. The browser is completely free, and unlike Brave or DuckDuckGo, it isn't trying to build an ecosystem around itself. It doesn't have its own search engine, a rewards program, an AI assistant. It's simply a browser. But what makes Mullvad different isn't what it includes, it's what it refuses to let you change. Most browsers encourage customization. Install whatever extensions you want. Change the theme. Rearrange the interface. Tweak every setting until the browser feels uniquely yours. Mullvad sees that as a problem, because the more unique your browser becomes, the easier it is to recognize. Imagine you're trying to disappear into a crowd. Most browsers hand everyone a different outfit and encourage them to express themselves. Mullvad hands everyone the same gray hoodie. Nobody stands out. That's the entire philosophy. Instead of trying to make your browser harder to identify, Mullvad tries to make every installation look as similar as possible. Font fingerprinting is reduced, and even installing lots of browser extensions is discouraged because every extension can subtly change your browser's fingerprint. If Mullvad browser feels familiar, that's because it shares substantial technology and privacy work with Tor browser. Mullvad browser was developed in collaboration with the Tor project and incorporates many of the same anti-fingerprinting ideas, but it doesn't route your traffic through the Tor network. Your traffic goes directly to websites, just like it would in a conventional browser. There's no onion routing or Tor relay network, and browsing generally feels much closer to a normal browser than Tor browser does. That also means Mullvad browser isn't trying to provide anonymity in the same way Tor browser does. Its primary goal is to make you difficult to distinguish from other Mullvad browser users, not to hide where your internet connection is coming from. That's an important distinction. Because Mullvad browser doesn't route your traffic through the Tor network, your internet provider or your VPN provider, if you're using one, can still see which websites you're connected to. Likewise, the websites you visit can still see your IP address unless you're using a VPN or another privacy-preserving network. Mullvad browser focuses on reducing browser fingerprinting, not hiding your network traffic. Think of it like this. Tor browser changes the route your car takes. Mullvad browser paints every car the exact same color. They're solving different problems. That distinction is important because people often lump every privacy browser into the same category. They're not. Brave focuses on practical everyday privacy by blocking trackers and reducing unnecessary data collection. LibreWolf focuses on hardening Firefox with stricter privacy defaults. DuckDuckGo focuses on making privacy effortless. Mullvad focuses on making users as difficult to distinguish from one another as possible. And that focus comes with trade-offs. If you enjoy customizing your browser, Mullvad can actually feel restrictive. The browser intentionally discourages many of the things other browsers celebrate. Installing 10 extensions isn't a great idea. Tweaking obscure settings is usually discouraged. Making the browser your own is almost the opposite of what its designers want. For some people, that's frustrating. For others, it's refreshingly honest. But there's still one browser that takes these ideas even further. Mullvad browser shares much of its codebase, many of its privacy protections, and much of its philosophy with it. The difference is that the next browser doesn't just try to make you look like everyone else. It tries to make it extraordinarily difficult for anyone to know where you came from in the first place. If Mullvad is about making you blend into the crowd, Tor takes that idea and adds a completely different layer. It hides the path your connection takes to the website. Tor browser is developed by the Tor project, and its biggest difference from everything we've covered so far is that the browser itself connects to the Tor network. Your connection doesn't simply go from your computer to a website. Instead, it normally passes through 3 Tor relays before reaching its destination: an entry guard, a middle relay, and an exit relay. That's where the name originally came from, the onion router. The idea is that your traffic is wrapped in multiple layers, and each relay only knows enough to pass it along to the next one. The entry guard can see your IP address and that you're connecting to Tor, but it doesn't know the final website you're visiting. The exit relay connects to the destination, but it doesn't know your original IP address. No single relay gets the complete picture, and that changes what privacy means. With Brave, DuckDuckGo, LibreWolf, and Mullvad, you're mainly trying to reduce what websites can learn about you. Tor goes further by separating your network identity from the websites you visit. The website you're connecting to doesn't receive your real IP address from your connection. It sees the Tor exit relay instead. It's also why Tor is useful in places where simply connecting to certain websites can be difficult. Tor supports bridges, which are alternative ways of connecting to the network when direct access to Tor is blocked or censored. Tor also supports specialized connection methods called pluggable transports that can make Tor traffic harder to block or recognize. That's made the technology useful not just for privacy enthusiasts, but for journalists, activists, and people living under heavy internet censorship. The trade-off is obvious. All those extra hops, combined with the limited and shared bandwidth of the Tor network, can make browsing noticeably slower than using a normal browser. Some websites will also make you solve CAPTCHAs often enough to start wondering whether you're proving you're human or applying for citizenship. And despite what you may have heard, Tor isn't the illegal browser. The technology itself is perfectly legitimate, and there are plenty of completely ordinary reasons to use it. The important thing is understanding what it actually protects. Tor doesn't make you magically invisible. If you log into your personal Google account, you've just told Google who you are. If you download a document and open it in an external application that connects to the internet, that application could make a direct connection outside Tor and potentially expose your real IP address. And if you give a website your name, email, or phone number, no routing system can stop you from doing that. Tor is therefore less about becoming invisible and more about separating your network identity from the websites you visit. And there's another important distinction. Mullvad browser and Tor browser look remarkably similar for a reason. Both are heavily concerned with making users difficult to distinguish from one another, and the two projects share substantial technology and privacy work. But Mullvad browser focuses primarily on making users blend into a larger group of similar browsers. Tor adds an entire anonymity network underneath the browser. So if Mullvad is about looking like everyone else, Tor is about looking like everyone else while making the journey to the website much harder to trace back to your original connection. Of course, that's also what makes Tor the least convenient browser we've covered so far, and for most people, you probably don't need that level of protection. But there's still another question worth asking. What if you like the familiarity and compatibility of Chromium, but you don't want Chrome's Google-specific integrations and services built into the experience? That's where Ungoogled Chromium comes in. Ungoogled Chromium is basically what it sounds like. Chromium with Google's integration stripped out, and that distinction matters because Chromium is an open-source browser project, while Chrome is Google's browser built from Chromium with additional components, services, and integrations layered on top. Ungoogled Chromium removes or disables many of those Google-specific pieces, including various web services and background communications that aren't necessary for the basic browser itself to function. The result is still recognizably Chromium. Websites generally work the way you'd expect from a Chromium-based browser. The interface is familiar too. The biggest difference is that you're getting the Chromium foundation without Chrome's Google-specific ecosystem built around it. But there's a catch. Removing Google's infrastructure also means giving up some of the convenience that comes with it. There's no built-in Google account synchronization, and the extension experience isn't identical to Chrome's. Updates can also be more hands-on depending on which build and installation method you're using, because Ungoogled Chromium isn't distributed as one single product with one universal update system. And this is where it's important not to confuse Ungoogled with maximum privacy. Ungoogled Chromium isn't primarily trying to be the most hardened or anonymous browser possible. Removing Google's integrations doesn't automatically give you Mullvad browser's anti-fingerprinting approach, Tor browser's anonymity network, or even Brave's built-in tracker blocking. And that leaves us with one final question. After all these different approaches to privacy, which browser should you actually use? For most people, Brave is probably the easiest place to start. DuckDuckGo keeps things even simpler. LibreWolf gives you a more hardened Firefox experience. Mullvad focuses heavily on keeping you indistinguishable from other users. Tor is the choice when anonymity matters, and Ungoogled Chromium is there if you want Chromium without Google's ecosystem. Or a less well-known privacy browser I left out from this list. There isn't one privacy browser that's best for everyone. The right choice depends on how much privacy you need, how much convenience you're willing to sacrifice, and what you're actually trying to protect.